And we're back on Build Phase TV, and on today's episode I have just under 30 minutes. I'm sitting here in my car outside of my son's jiu-jitsu class, and I am going to try to review every single... Man, it's too bright for this. I'm going to try to review every single main character in the Deep 6 format, like speed dating style. So, starting with Nebula. We have Nebula. She's passive 0-3-5. There are games where she just straight up loses. Nothing can be done. You just don't draw what you need. But at the end of an enemy turn, if Nebula is equipped with one-of-a-kind equipment, she gains an XP. When she levels up, she becomes a 12-12-5, which is considerably better, gains range. Thanos characters become passive. This is flavor, doesn't affect most games. And main phase, pay a space, choose a printed keyword or superpower, and Nebula gets to gain it. If she levels up, she becomes quite good. I think Robert Smallwood kind of proved in the Benchwarmers format that equipment-dependent decks are absolutely playable. On the games where she levels, she looks good. She doesn't always level. Thanos. This guy, I'm a fan of him. I don't think I have time to sit here and read 93 cards back-to-back, so I'm going to kind of brush past some of these. I really like this guy. He's got an aggressive bend, and if you can get him leveled up, he becomes very good. The problem is if you end up in situations where you kind of get stalled out and you just never get to trigger schemes and dreams, he can kind of lose gas. If you can get to the level 3, you're almost guaranteed to get to the level 4, but sometimes you just get locked at level 2. You never get a scheme or dream, and you never level up. Fun character, though. I really like Thanos. Black Panther. Now, this guy made such a splash in the Life's Too Short format because of Bulletproof. That is such an annoying power to have on a main character. It can just straight up shut down some strategies. So he's a very playable character. His stat line of 3-4-5 is maybe a little bit too fair, but this is a fun guy. You legitimately can level with him pretty consistently. You do have the occasional weird draw where, I mean, every deck has a fail rate, and one that requires you to not only draw the right cards, but also get them out of your hand and into the KO pile. Sometimes he can have these awkward turns where you never get to see his level up. But if you do get to see his level up, you get to reuse all of that stuff out of the KO pile, which is really good. His 5 health holds him back a little bit, but this is totally a playable character in the Deep 6 format. Captain Marvel. This is a weird main character. She definitely has game, and I think part of the value of playing her is that your opponent has some control, but they don't have direct, easy, obvious control over your level up conditions. So you can force your opponent into situations where they make kind of questionable choices because they're trying to play around this, so they're declaring suboptimal attacks because they don't want to allow Captain Marvel to get experience off characters striking. So you have to kind of maybe not optimize your attack. You have to do some suboptimal attacks to keep experience off of her, because once she gets big, entering combat and letting her just smack another dude, she's definitely a playable character. There are some things in the format that could really hurt her. In good hands is a card that makes Carol Danvers cry. But this is also a playable main character. Hawkeye, this guy, man, so you don't have to do anything with the attack. You just have to make a ranged attack. So as long as you can put enough low-cost characters with range into your deck, you can get that experience, and you can do it before turn 5, and you can actually level this guy up. 2 defense on a main character is not the best number, like, by any stretch. So he is kind of held back a little bit by that, but his quiver, all the options that gives him, he looks quite a bit better at level 2, although still 7-5 with only 5 health. I get it. Hawkeye is just a dude. I think it was Scott Cozzolino maybe was on the Collective and talked about how the 5 health point is really kind of thematically tied to a lot of these characters are like people, and 6 health is for people who are like superpowers, more durable. Like, okay, I get all that, but sometimes I just want game mechanic reasons for characters to have more health. And I think Hawkeye's held back by that somewhat. I mean, the cool thing about Versus, and particularly this Deep 6 format, is that there is, by deleting the teams out of the format and deleting Legacy out of the card pool that you're allowed to build from, it feels more open. Well, probably it feels more open to me because I have not drilled down on testing super hard in this one. I'm a little bit, perhaps in a juvenile way, kind of bitter that A-Force is not included in this like original teams thing that they did here, and I therefore have not really played very many games in Deep 6. So it may be less open of a format than it feels to me at this time, given my state of having not played it super competitively. That said, there's, I think, a lot of playable main characters here, and there aren't too many things that shut the door on a bunch of other main characters. So moving on to Blade, I just don't think this guy levels. If he levels, he's cool, but in most games, I don't think this guy's going to level before he dies. His stats are too small, and his level up takes too long. Deacon Frost, this guy is dope. This guy, there are the games where you can just get beat by your own deck. You just never draw the cards you need, and you stay at 2/4/5, which is not a great stat block. But what does he need? He needs a green or a Fisk Tower, and Kane is a card. I guess you don't get to play Kane in this format, but still, I think this guy is playable for sure. His level 2 is absolutely worth going after. The Doppelganger powers thing is really cool. There's a lot going on with this card. For me personally, I'm not a big fan of playing decks where if I don't draw like this specific thing, I just kind of slowly lose. So this is the sort of main character I personally probably wouldn't play, because the high rolls with him would feel great, but the low rolls kind of push the button in me as a player that I don't react to well. So I probably wouldn't field this guy myself. I'm not going to talk about Daredevil. This guy's not good. Doctor Strange. Sorry, Ben. Doctor Strange. He is a 2/4/5, pay a blue, draw a card. You can use it any number of times. There aren't very many superpowers in the game that let you do that, and I think one of the reasons this guy lets you do it is because it's not that strong of a superpower. You're essentially making a lateral move. You're trading one card for one other card. That said, when you level up, you get to keep drawing cards. It really, a deck with Doctor Strange isn't about Doctor Strange. It's about drawing into some kind of a combo or some kind of a win condition where you have such card advantage that you overwhelm them on board, which I guess is kind of a combo, but that's not really the same thing that we mean when we say a combo deck. So his mass transmutation power is situationally amazing. Often it's just fine. The reason you play Doctor Strange is because there's cards in your deck that you need to see in order to win, and it has less to do with the Doctor himself and more to do with digging your way to those other cards. Ghost Rider, you can't play this guy. I mean, you can, but if you're trying to do well, if you're trying to take a serious event seriously and do well in that event, you can't play Ghost Rider. This guy is a lot of fun. When he gets leveled up, the whole driving his motorcycle to the other side of the board is great. I love this character. I'm a big fan. I would not take him to a tournament. Luke Cage is maybe the best defender main character. Certainly has more, I think, top cut finishes than any other defender's main character, although I haven't actually checked that. That's just my somewhat questionable memory. His ability to go get his guy, so he gets to level up. There's really nothing your opponent can do to stop it at all. He gets to go search out Iron Fist, and his guy goes up and punches pretty much anything, so he has kind of a built-in board control. He's gonna have hand advantage because in these early turns he's using his recruit points to level up, so Luke Cage always ends up with more cards in hand and really good answers for the board as well. On top of it, this guy's definitely a playable main character. 5 health in today's format does feel worse than it once did, but Luke Cage. Bullseye is a joke. He's just a joke. All you have to do is, if if you have a main character that has 4 attack, you don't even have to recruit characters to beat this guy. That's a little bit of an exaggeration. He's not very good. His power seems cool, to just put a wound on a main character, but we have seen Danny and Ben kind of, while not verbally publicly acknowledge that this power was costed wrong, we have seen other powers subsequently on other cards that are costed differently that let you put wounds places, and they're not costed like this. They're just not. So Bullseye, I think, was their first attempt to make a character that had this direct wound kind of power, which is a strong thing. And from a design standpoint, especially this early in the game, I don't blame them at all for costing this very highly, because it's a strong effect. It's too expensive. I don't think there's a reason to play that guy. Kingpin. Oh, man. This guy keeps coming back up. If you get to the top of him, I guess you don't get the level 3s in this format, though, do you? Every time I try to think about Deep 6, I forget that we don't get Legacy, and it's so hard to think about these cards without Legacy, because Legacy is definitive to a lot of these teams. In a world without Kane, and a world without the Legacy level up version, I don't think you play Kingpin. I don't think his power is good enough. I think his level up is going to be difficult. It could be expensive if you end up having to put a bunch of greens into it, which means you have less overall cards later to use Kingpin of Crime, which isn't that good to begin with. And he only has 5 health. I don't think Kingpin's good enough. Venom. Oh, man. I've tried real hard with this character, and I know he top 8'd at one point. I think it was Las Vegas. I know it was, Sean, and Venom t-shirt, Venom fan. I remember the whole story, and it was very cool. I'm not sure in this card pool Venom has the legs he needs. A lot of the fun tools and tricks and toys that we would use to make him better are not available, and I just don't think he has it. Winter Soldier has never been good. His whole thing is too slow. The having to freeze him, I get the flavor of he's the Winter Soldier. He goes out and does a mission, and then he's frozen for a turn. It just makes his level up take forever. It's too slow, and the payoff is not super great. I mean, it is decent, but by the time he's doing this, we're talking about like turn 4 if things have gone well, later if things have not, and 7 attack is just not that big of a number. It's going to be harder for him to make use of his sniper rifle and actually get the payoff. This guy has never been that great of a main character. I'd rather play MCU Bucky than this version, although I do love. I admit to having never played a game with this guy. I don't think this guy is good. If you draw the yellows and you level him up on 3, and you don't even... So that's the thing. This deck puts you in the position where you're going to be spending the yellow to gain the recruit point, even if you don't have a character to recruit, even if you don't need the recruit point. You got to do it just to get his stats to stop sucking. And once he levels up, okay, there is 12-12 during enemy players' turns is kind of legit. Probably at the point in the game, if you do it on turn 3, 12-12 during enemy turns is a big deal. But then what are you doing on your turn? I don't know. I don't think this guy's very good, but I admit that I haven't played him. I like the Valkyrie main character in this format. I think she loses a lot of things that make her seem really interesting. I'm not sure that there's enough left for her to be like a tier 1. If you're into what she tries to do, I mean, I wouldn't laugh at you for playing Valkyrie in the Deep 6 format, but I don't see her being a character to watch out for. I don't know that I would even build a Valkyrie deck for a gauntlet if I was making a gauntlet for this format. Namor, I love this guy. So the problem with him is your opponent does have, I think, a little bit too much control over both your level up condition and your level 1 power, like how good it is. So you can end up in these situations where your opponent just isn't attacking with more than like 1 ranged guy a turn, and Namor is just stacking wounds, and he's not really ever able to attack. Like if you have a flyer up front and you have a ranged guy in back, you can just pick him apart and he never gets to attack for experience. Yes, the Namor player will also play supporting characters, maybe clear those blockers out of the way. So I do think Namor has legs. This is a main character I would take seriously and build and test around. But he seems a little bit linear. So, Adam Warlock, without his gem, is so much worse. And you can play the gem, you just can't play any spaces. I mean, ducking and hiding and building a big board is probably a good strategy in every format, so I'm sure Adam Warlock, even without his gem, is still playable. I hate that main character. I think Cosmo is good. It kind of is a little bit dependent on what your opponent does, and if they're hip to how he levels, you better believe they will take the lines, if they can, where they play the guy that has range and not the second guy that has flight, and make it harder for Cosmo to level. He can just lose to himself if you don't get those yellows. I mean, if you're waiting to like turn 4 to knock keywords off a couple guys, like, you're in big trouble with Cosmo. So he does have some draw variance that's a very real challenge for the deck. Once he levels up, though, he's great. Just to be able to wipe flight off a team forever, wipe whatever, you wipe powers before your opponent even plays the characters that have those powers on them, so they don't get the appear effects off something. I think Cosmo is a character worth playing. I'm not sure how I feel about Kitty Star-Lord in this format. She seems pretty weak. You really don't have any of the good deck filtration techniques to try to get to... I mean, she has a deck filtration technique built into her, but, like, is hers good enough by itself to commit to a deck where you know she can't level, and you know she won't level because you can't play spaces in this format? I don't think you play this main character in Deep 6. I love level 4 Deadpool, like, a great deal. It's a long walk to get him leveled up. It's kind of a fun journey. I think it's a deck that everybody should play and test. I know some people think he's, like, competitive. I think he's a lot of fun, and if you take him to a tournament, and if you're not going to be made salty by having to eat some losses over the fact that sometimes he just never gets there, I think you can have fun with this guy. Do I expect to see him top an event? No, I do not. I do not expect to see this guy top an event. Probably not even top cut an event. But fun main character. I think you could probably have a positive win rate. Maybe make top cut of an event. Well, if you get there, he becomes really difficult to deal with. The problem is it's such a long walk to get there. But he's a fun main character. I like this guy. Evil Deadpool. In Deep 6, I think he loses too many tools. I don't think this guy is worth really considering here. You're going to have a hard time... I mean, how many discard effects are even in the Deep 6 format? Yeah, I don't think you play this guy. He's just never gotten there, guys. I've played a bunch of Colossus decks. His level down condition ends up just being too easy to... No matter how far ahead you think you are, no matter how good you think you're doing, there's just always a chance that you shrink back down and get stuck there. I'm not a huge fan. Don't play Captain America. He's probably not good, ever. I have played a bunch of this main character, and he's... I mean, if you're ever going to play a format, maybe Deep 6 is the one where you play this guy, because it's a little bit like the power spikes are a little bit less crazy than some of the other formats, but probably not. No, I don't think you play Hulk. I don't think this guy's good. Sure. I don't know how many copies of any specific characters are legal here, although I'm going to be... Actually, you know what? No, I'm going to say you don't ever play this guy, because you don't play a deck that centers around power-ups when you don't get to play Floki, so unplayable. Moving on. Spider-Man. Without his level 3, I don't think he's good enough. Sorry. Once Legacy came out, the idea of playing this card, I should have torn up this card on the spot. You never play this card again, and I think you feel bad if you play it. I don't think you play this guy in this format. Or any format. I don't think you play this main character in any format where you don't get to become the level 3 version of him. I'm probably being too harsh. I mean, you do have a lot of control over his level up condition. I don't know. I don't see it. Man, I had a great time with Storm and Sealed and like 10 blues and just boom, 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 boom. If you have to activate superpowers, how many superpowers low on the curve are worth it? If you're just relying on her superpower, that feels a little bit slow for a character with 5 health. If you really like Storm, there's probably something you could do here that will be annoying to some decks. I don't see it. I don't see you playing Wolverine without his level 3. I just don't. I think this is less bad than the Spider-Man situation, because this Wolverine is actually being able to heal from him could potentially be strong. Punching with 8 plus Snicked could potentially be strong. That's way better than the level 2 Spider-Man from the base box. I mean, unless you really want to play Wolverine, I think there's better choices in the format. I don't think this guy is real in this format at all. Yes, you can play this main character as a main character, but you need to be able to have like aliens. Spook is just so critical to the deck. I don't think there's enough stuff in Deep 6 that's going to make up for that lack. Probably he doesn't level, and almost certainly he doesn't get a, oh, there's someone. Plus, Think Again is going to be rotten in this format. That eats this guy's lunch. Well, if there was ever a format for a main character that absolutely relies on not having to worry about a 35-minute time limit, maybe this is the time for Professor X. There are certainly some strong supporting characters that you could get and kind of just spend those early turns leveling up. The problem is, if you're not doing anything for 4 turns, and you have to not do anything for 4 turns, you kind of need to do more than just fish for strong curve characters. Like, trying to build this guy as a mid-range deck, I think, is a pretty big mistake, and I don't know that there's any really strong combos in Deep 6 that he could be fishing for that would make him the go-to guy. I don't think Rocket is actually good enough. His stats are just so bad. It's expensive to do his thing. Maybe, I mean, what do you want to recycle with him? What makes it worth it to have these stats and this level up condition where you have to totally gut your hand? Yeah, I don't think Rocket sees play. I have never cared for this main character. I know that some people have had success with him. I don't think soft ramp is that good, and I don't think his payoff effect is good enough. If this lasted until the start of your next main phase, basically like Cosmo does, I think this guy would have some game. As is, I think this is kind of a bad main character. Gamora just does not level. She is so hard to level. If she levels, she becomes fairly amazing, except that you have to pay this, then declare your attack, so your opponent knows it's coming. It's not like you can back them into a wall and force them to expend resources worried that this might be the time they use that attack. I don't think she levels. I don't think this is the main character. Groot without his level 3, I don't think you play him. Green Goblin without his level 3, I don't think you play him. Loki without Sister Grimm and some of the other plot twists, there's just not enough plot twists in this format to make him awesome, I think. So I don't think you play him. Magneto is kind of a good, fair main character, and there is decent curve options available in the format, so I think you can probably get away with building around this guy. I don't care for how much control your opponent has over my 4 defense main character being face up at the start of the turn. That feels a little bit rough. His payoff is pretty good, though. I think this guy could potentially have some game, although you might having to work a little bit harder to make him work than some of the other main characters. Thanos, don't play this guy. The legacy reprint of Thanos, I don't think he's good enough. I don't think he ever levels. I don't think you play that guy. I think this guy is great. He has the vast majority of his tools came in the boxes with him, in the arc with him. So yeah, he's going to lose a few things that I think could really like help make this deck shine, like Kane, for instance. But I think there's something here, and it seems likely because he's a hot new toy that people are going to want to play this guy. I would definitely gauntlet for this main character. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but my half hour is up, so now I'm starting to really speed through them. I don't think I'm going to finish this video in time. Iron Fist. I think his level up is tough. if you get the payoff, if you like playing this kind of deck where you have to get up in people's faces and go first and be aggressive, I think you can probably play this guy, particularly in an event like the one we have tomorrow, where it's like a little bit more of a casual bend, but it's still a competitive event. I think this guy could hang there. I'm not sure this guy would make the table at, like, if there was a Deep Six Gen Con. I don't think this is the guy you play. But he's not, I don't think you have to feel bad for playing him. I think Dormammu is good. I think this guy's playable. Again, kind of like Doctor Strange, I think in a modern card pool or a multiverse card pool, he gets a lot more tools that could help him be even more consistent. But I think this guy's good. I like him. I would, if I were building decks for a Deep Six event, I would gauntlet this guy, even potentially take this guy to an event because I really like him. So, oh, is that the last one? Cool, I made it. 1 minute over my 30-minute time limit. So this whole video was brought to you by, well, not by, but because of Pocket Versus. There's no way I could have done this same kind of thing using the Versus database on my phone. It just doesn't. So I will say the first time you load a card, it takes a second. So I went through before I recorded and I preloaded all the cards to make them. Look how snappy they are. So shout out to OBS again for this wonderful product of Pocket Versus. And I hope to see some of you guys, and I plan to do some commentary for the Deep Six event that happens tomorrow. So, until next time, go win some games.